Well, welcome everyone. Firstly, let me acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and meet today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. It's great to see you all here today for what I'm sure is going to be a great talk. Let me first of all introduce you to Nicolas Lemay-Hebert, who's a fellow in the Department of International Relations at ANU. Nicolas, or as he's increasingly being called now in Australia, Nick, graduated with his PhD at Sciences Po in Paris, subsequently went to work at the University of Quebec in Montreal, then went to become a senior lecturer at the University of Birmingham before starting at the ANU in 2019. So he's a recent arrival in Australia. But it didn't take long, obviously, for Nicolas to become Nick. Nicolas' research, and he's going to talk to it more directly shortly, but his research really is focused on questions of state building and intervention, particularly, I think, in the Asia and Pacific regions. And he's been quite prolific with his publications and has edited 4 books, including a book in 2017, most recently called Hybridity, Law, Culture and Development. Prior to that, in 2015, a book called The Political Invention of Fragile States. And in the year before that, 2014, a book called Semantics of State Building. He's also, as it turns out, the editor of the Journal of Intervention and State Building, and I think works with Shahar as one of the editors of the Routledge book series on intervention and state building.
Low down the
So,
he's the boss.
It's terrific to have Nicolas here today, not least because he had to battle the fog to get out of Canberra and many delays. You would have expected that an 8:40 flight from Canberra should see him get here in good time for a 1 o'clock seminar, but he really only arrived 10 minutes ago, unfortunately. So hopefully you've had time to catch your breath and get ready to go. So we're really delighted to have you here, Nicolas, and the paper that he's going to be speaking to today is titled Security Mapping and Colour Encoding, a Critical Cartography of Interventions. The floor is yours, Nicolas.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'm really delighted to be here. I've just started, literally, as Richard was saying, in January this year. So I've only arrived and still learning my way a little bit through the Australian system. Just really delighted to be able to meet, colleagues and friends and meet new friends potentially. So the project I'm presenting is based on an article I've just published this year in Political Geography. I have a copy of it if someone wants to have a look at it. The title of the article was Living in the Yellow Zone, and you will see I'll be discussing this, but what I would like to do what I want to do this year would potentially to be applying for ARC grant on the basis of this, so any feedback would really be welcome here. So this is kind of one of my the first half of my research agenda, I would say, in Australia would be to be working on the critical cartography of intervention and state building. The other half, I'm working on the political economy of interventions, especially looking at salary scales, housing market, that sort of thing. So I'll talk about my first half, but if you have any question after that on the other projects as well, I'm happy to be discussing this. So this project started off as almost really a side project in essence. So I've been working on Haiti for the last 10 years or so. So since 2010, and I've also lectured in Port-au-Prince for a while. And then when I was especially working with a group of lawyers who were actually suing the UN for having brought cholera to Haiti. So I've been working with them on this for quite a while. And as a kind of a side project, I kind of got my hand on a map that I will be showing you in a minute. That is the map of Haiti and the different security zones. And then it started off as, what, really? Looking at the size of the zone, I kind of realized that this was 70% of Port-au-Prince, as you will see. So I was like, what are the actual ramifications of this? How does this actually translate into a different political economy or playing out in the state building process of Haiti? So the color coding is not something new, obviously. I started getting my hands on all sorts of maps, if possible, of the different security zones and different interventions. So there are green zones quite famous in Kabul and Baghdad. But also I found a blue zone in Juba, South Sudan. That is the blue zone where the UN staffers are actually expected to live. And so they cannot live outside of the blue zone. So it's also something interesting for me. There's a white zone in Mogadishu. And there's a red zone in Bangui and other countries, like also in Haiti, which is usually zones of unrest where you have to be careful, and it comes with a specific security protocol. However, the color encoding and circularity mapping is not something new. That's actually thanks to the reviewer of the protocol geography piece who pointed this out. So I started looking at this, and I think it started with the Boots poverty map of London in the 19th century, where you can see, so he basically mapped London on the basis of, obviously, affluence, but also other criteria. That is quite close, you will see from what we have in Haiti. So you have lower class, vicious, semi-criminal, moving to very poor, casual, chronic want, poor, mixed, some comfortable, some others not. Fairly comfortable, good ordinary earnings, which is interesting, ordinary. Middle class, well-to-do, upper middle, and upper classes, wealthy. So you have this kind of, basically, cartography of London that is also a social cartography in a sense, with social implications. This is also true for security maps and more insurance business in the US after the New Deal, where you have all of the US mapped out in the different zones and with different meanings in terms of the neighborhood. If certain neighborhoods would be more affluent than others, or in terms of security risk. And in general, right now, we have trillions of maps of different kinds with different risks associated to every map. So I'm not even using those that are looking at environmental risk. You will have a lot of these. Or following disasters. So there's obviously a red zone in Christchurch, for instance, after the earthquake, where it's mapping where the downtown will be reconstructed. But that's Chicago, with it's a kind of a police map where it shows where it's actually risky in terms of security incidents. So triple homicide, double homicide, police involved.
I know.
And sorry.
No, I'm going to be in Chicago next week.
Yeah. So
getting worried.
Try to avoid that. But then, it creates its own reality. Yeah? But and this is Kelowna. I don't know if there's any Canadians in the room. I don't know. I'm from Canada. I'm from Montreal originally. No, Kelowna is like one of those really quiet cities. But they have actually started a red zone where drug addicts cannot go back if they have been actually found guilty of using drugs. So it's another one, and that's Islamabad, the red zone. So there are different red zones and yellow zones and circular encoding. But what I'm trying to do is basically the cartography literature or the political geography literature in the case of interventions precisely had been very very mainstream in the sense it was a military cartography that was there to serve a purpose that was for the interveners. Especially you have that following the 90s interventions in the Balkans with the security zones in Bosnia. So it's a cartography that is really wanting to map out the field and doesn't really allow for room of actually inquiring in the sense of the actual process. So here I think that there's a potential for a critical cartography that is looking at the analysis of how power works through maps, informing how they are made, read, and otherwise used. So not just treating them as just an object, but also as something that is actually creating reality. So then you move from a map, that is the object, to mapping, that is the process, where it's a set of knowledge that is reaffirmed, remade, but also reappropriated and contested. So local actors will be using maps in different ways, not only to contest the maps, but also sometimes to appropriate a certain form of knowledge through this. And you will see this in Haiti is quite clear. My work is, I use a lot securitization in different ways, not in the way that the Copenhagen School is using it, really. Not really interested so much about speech acts and all this. more about the everyday practices of securitization, on a vernacular term, as my colleagues in France would call this. So my research questions, we were partially answered in the articles, or something I will need to look at for the big project, was to try to understand the process of setting up of these zones and the ramifications on the local actors living in the security zones. So how are they determined by MINUSTA, which is the UN mission in Haiti? What logics of securitization they serve, and how do they impact and shape the state building processes in Haiti? As I'm saying, I'm not fully satisfied with my own answer to my questions. It's something I need to do a little bit more, especially because it's very, very difficult to actually trace maps. Probably you need really strong field work there, but it's a knowledge that is how can I put this, that stacks up in a sense. So you create a map, and then someone else will be using the map, will be transforming it, but then to actually be able to trace the process of knowledge production is very difficult, especially in the case of UN, where there's always loss of institutional knowledge. And in the case of Haiti in 2010 with the earthquake and the UN headquarters that collapsed, obviously it also played a massive role in that regard. So as I was saying, I did this almost on the side, always paid to do other projects and asking a few questions to UN officials on the side and asking about that. But also what I've done, I will show you the map. I've actually interviewed hotel owners who are in the yellow zones and asking them, how do you react to that, of being classified yellow? As you will see, this has massive political economy ramifications for people living in these zones. It's also true for Kabul right now, but definitely in Haiti. So I've actually looked at only three major hotels that are catering for expats. And I've looked at Le Marcelin, which is a hotel that has a little bit of expats, mostly backpackers, because it's a little bit out of the way. And then I've looked at hotels that are basically looking for the diaspora, Haitian American, Haitian Canadian diaspora that is coming in town. So I have 4 preliminary arguments. I'm looking at the imagined geography of Port-au-Prince through risk and risk creation. I'm also looking at the process of inclusion and exclusion, social segregation that is already at play in Haiti, but how these maps actually contribute to this in different ways. I also think I have something to say about bunkerization, which is, I don't know if you are familiar with that literature, but it comes roughly from the Mark Duffel's work on bunkerization. But I've always treated the green zones as something out there in the desert, and basically bunkerizing themselves and without being in contact with others. And in this case of Haiti, the green zone is the area of affluence in the city. So it has a different twist then, because then you are directly contributing to the social segregation process, really playing in the hands of the local elite, who is just really happy to be welcoming all this money flowing in their little bourgeois town and excluding all the other places where Haitians or normal Haitians would be living. And I've been looking at the strategies. I've mainly interviewed, because the hotel owners were able to tell me things, but I've also interviewed local NGO workers that were working in the red zone, because it was a bit more, we were more vocal about this and how they were actually confronting these logics of securitization. So this is the map. It's a bit difficult to, if you don't know Haiti or Port-au-Prince, to actually have a sense of the dimension here. But this is the downtown area, and this is a different city basically. This is Carrefour, and then here, the more you go up there, this is kind of a plateau here, and then it goes in the mountain. The more you go up here, the more you are going towards Pétionville, which is the most affluent part of the city, which is a different city in its own right, and is the kind of the bourgeois place. So, and here you have Cité Soleil, still in red, which is the area of risk, right? With the area that you want to. So if you look at, this is the big Port-au-Prince area. metropolitan area. So you have, I mean, it's difficult, but you will have the map doing this here. You see. So you have most of the center of Port-au-Prince is incorporated in this yellow zone, and what is not incorporated is part of. This is a residential area, quite calm, middle class. Here you are starting to go towards the areas where it's a bit more wealthy and affluent. And here you are. What is interesting is that areas here, for instance, are the worst areas ever you can find, right? They're very, very difficult areas, but they are not even mapped because it serves no purpose, as you will see. It's too outside for strangers to actually ever go there. So obviously, if you are there, you will. It's potentially difficult because we're talking about very small streets. It goes down here into a ravine, so it will be. You shouldn't be there really. So this is an interesting map for that purpose. So when I first saw that, I was wondering, how did you come up with that? And also, what is this really clear demarcation here? It's a boulevard here. It's a street. How did they determine that this street here is the major changing kind of place for the boundary for this zone? Because there's no major difference between the two here, especially here and here. So, and here you have the airport somewhere here. So you have, everything is pretty much included in that yellow zone. And this, I mean, because I wasn't really successful in my my tentative to track the historicity of the maps, but this is something I found in the dustbin of the internet. You know, when you start logging after hours and hours, I found something on Flickr account that is not even working. I've sent trillions of emails to that person, never answered. But so this is in March 2010. But it tells us that the map hasn't really changed, right? We see a little bit of difference. The Bel Air region now is yellow. This is red, and then now it's the Cité Soleil is more red than this. But you see the same boulevard here, basically tracing the demarcation between what is green and what is. So here, what you see green here is not really a green zone; it's just a park. But here you have Pétionville, the most affluent part of the city. So what does that mean to be in the yellow zone, right? So the red zone, when you are in the red zone, it's military escort. You have to have the right of your military commander, and they will come with you, escorting you. So there's really rarely a reason for you to do this, unless you work for Doctors Without Borders, for instance. You will have a military escort that will drive you there. But if you are just a usual, normal rank and file UN official, you wouldn't use this. But what is interesting here is the yellow zone. It's basically you have staff members strongly advised to exercise extreme caution and remain vigilant when traveling to or through the yellow zone. Okay, that means it's not even listed there, but windows up, doors locked. So, so long for the local term. This is not happening in Haiti. You don't talk to anyone, right? You just drive through the yellow zone, which is 70%, as I was saying, of Port-au-Prince, right? And you have radios. You have a clearance from the base, and you have to be accompanied by another colleague. And at 5 o'clock, the yellow zone becomes a red zone. So that's where the political economy twist happens, right? So that means good luck in revitalizing this area. And I'm saying this is the area that was completely destroyed by the earthquake. So we are saying we want to build back Haiti better, but we are basically excluding all this area from any, potential investment, because that means that no internationals will be able to actually go to these zones after 5. So no restaurants. No hotels, or the hotels that I've talked to are struggling because of that reason. So this is the major problem here. This is what I was interested to understand. And I don't have it here, but I've also done I've looked at the major bilateral actors and donors in Haiti, and roughly they all follow the same the same maps. So with one region out and one region in, but it will be mostly the same map. So this is a map that is kind of creating authority in the field. I will come to this everyday side because I've done a Twitter search and stuff. But anyways, so the securitization in practice here and the imagined kind of security that is going on is that, first of all, in this area, nothing happens. I mean, it's an area as a researcher that I go there. I've been there a number of times. I've beers with my friends. There's really, really no risk. And Haiti, in general, is a low-risk country. You know, we're talking about a homicide rate of 6.9 for 100,000 inhabitants. Dominican Republic, 25. That doesn't stop people to go, especially from the US and Canada, to go there for vacation. Trinidad and Tobago, 26. Jamaica, 41, right? So in terms of labeling states as weak and fragile and difficult areas, you know, here we go. A colleague of mine published a really powerful report, unfortunately in French. No one has really picked this up, but he's from the State University of Haiti. He said really interestingly, it's an old report on how the criminal waves in Haiti are often more fantasized than real. It just creates its own purpose, right? Fear creates its own logic. And this is something that even inside organizations, anyone who wants to look at this will pick this up, right? From people from Doctors Without Borders will be contesting this from the inside, saying it makes no sense to be labeling these zones as yellow or red, okay? So you have it's just a cursory view of how this also plays out in the in everyday relations, but you have someone who says, for instance, prayer for all of Haiti today. I don't remember what happened at the time. The place I also so special in my heart is that in the red zone, pray these wonderful people are kept safe. Marsha Henry, my colleague from LSE, who's been researching the red zone, not so much the yellow zone, but and she said from red zone to green zone. So there's a number of projects who are positioning themselves as greening. I call this in the article greening strategies in order to change the security code. And here you have it's what is it? A TripAdvisor review, right? And someone said, "Oh, I stayed at this lovely hotel." One of the hotel owners I've interviewed. "Well, I stayed at this lovely hotel with my wife. Did not expect that there's such a lovely hotel like this in the downtown of Port-au-Prince red zone area." You see, so it becomes something that people use after that. It makes sense. It creates social sense, right? And one of the hotel owners who were the most vocal critic was actually from the Hotel Olofsson. Anyone who has a little bit of knowledge of Haiti has been through this hotel, which is really an amazing hotel. And he's Haitian American, advisor to the president for a while, and he was really, really adamant about this. And he said, red zone used to mean unsafe now. It evolved into you are poor, we don't like you, we don't want your money spent there, and he has 1 trillion of tweets. And so that's one of the first conversations I had with him that kind of started my interest in the question, let's say. So this is coming from a training curriculum from the UN, so that's quite interesting. It's also something I've been trying to do, and I haven't been able to answer my own question, so that's something I would like to do in the research project. So part of the training, when you become a UN official or when you are actually assigned to Port-au-Prince, you have a security training. And so part of the security training, they were talking about the yellow zone. As you can see, I don't know what he was actually saying, the security trainer, he or she. But what you can see is that they are associating the yellow zone with arms and drugs, right? Weirdly enough, the year after, these two pictures were removed. Probably led to a discussion, internal discussion about how they are depicting part of Haiti here. But so in my interviews, there was the social segregation argument came up a lot, And there's a saying in Haitian Creole: the money remains up above, it doesn't go down. And again, it goes back to the geography of the city, where the money is above, it means towards Pétionville, right? There's a lot of people, all the elite will never actually go towards the yellow zone. They will really stop there. They will all the schools are up there. Everything you can think of are actually in your little elite bubble there. So, as I was saying, the green zone here is not detached from the local context. It's an integral part of the political geography of the city. So, for one of the hotel owners, the UN is part of this social class of Pétionville, the elite, right? it protects people from Pétionville, people with means. Right, so here we go with the political kind of economy of this intervention. Again, Richard Morse, the hotel owner, he said, the red zone had morphed into another reality. Red zone now began to mean we don't want you to spend money there. We don't want you hanging out there. There's a poor that's a poor middle class area where we don't want you to be seen there. So let's go and spend your money in the green zone. We want you to go to these specific hotels, these restaurants in this part of town. Okay. This is from my colleague at the State University of Haiti, who had actually been able to map where the expats live in Port-au-Prince. As you can see, this is the yellow zone, right? Port-au-Prince with a heavily dense area. And then here you have Pétionville up there, right? That I was showing you, the area where the elite. So you can see that all of them are obviously outside of the yellow zone just for security regulations, but also mostly aggregated towards. So this is all Pétionville, basically Bourdon, and so it's all part of the wider area of Pétionville. And here Paco is just an area that is a bit closer to the downtown, but it's also very stable, very calm, and more middle class than elite. So here you would have mostly humanitarian NGOs that don't want to be seen as too posh. Then these zones are very posh, and then you will have like those who are a bit more kind of, flowers in the air type of thing. But it's still very, very nice, So when I ask UN officials, why do you do this? What's going on, Every time I was asking questions, I was seeing in their eyes that they were not really understanding this. Well, what I was discussing, right? They were all like, so the answer I got from them is that, well, we don't have people there, so we don't have to security manage it. So what do you want me to change this if it makes no sense for us? These regulations are for us. It's not for them. I'm not creating anything for Haitians. It's just basically I don't want my own staff to go there because I don't have the resources to manage them. So it's better to manage them in Pétionville where I know where they will be, right? But the reality is that the security problems now, if you look at a real realist, looking at security threats on the ground, like you reverse the argument from a critical perspective, it's actually where most of the problems are, is in Pétionville. This is the real insecure place right now in Haiti, So you have a security expert that said, for instance, when many NGOs arrived in 2010, they probably said Stisola is dangerous, Martissan is dangerous, Carrefour is dangerous. I love the bam, bam, bam red zones. When I arrived, I said, all right, these are dangerous areas. We will not go there. But between you and me, there are places in Pétionville that are more dangerous than places in Cité Soleil. So this is kind of local knowledge. If you know Haiti, you will know that, well, in Pétionville on a Saturday night, things can be difficult, if you are, going to the ATM to get a little bit of money in order to get your fifth beer or something. So I found that, again, dustbin of the internet, a map of insecurity produced by a security actor. Okay? So he was a security person, and he was basically saying what is interesting about this area is that you have Paco, that I was mentioning, the area where humanitarians live, Pétionville, then so he labeled them preferred neighborhood, okay? And then you have the places where in red you have to avoid, which is roughly the yellow zone, a bit more here, right? But if you look at the actual security incidents that he is taking, they all happen in Pétionville, right? There's a few there, of course, here, but it's interesting that it doesn't really follow the same logic of security threats. It's completely disconnected from the own argument, in a sense, okay? And so, how am I doing time-wise? In terms of local perspective or local reactions, what is interesting is that you have a mix of resistance, outright resistance, but also a co-option of this language. So there was someone, for instance, that was a Haitian American, saying that we only found out that this was a red zone actually because we were not getting any aid. So you would imagine after 2010, because it was labeled as a red zone and you don't have the military convoy in time to help you, they had to actually airdrop aid. to the communities. Obviously, again, the local turn, not really happening, you know. This is not great for hearts and minds type of process. But so Haitian Americans who were not actually following these security regulations and knew about Haiti were actually trying to do something. But other processes are also very interesting. So the Bel Air in 2009, and so they were trying. There was a petition to be moving the red zone to a green zone, right? But that's super interesting because it's a local community who decided to have that petition, and then they handed out this petition to the Haitian Prime Minister, who has nothing to say about security regulations by and for the UN, right? Has no power over this. But then the Prime Minister jumped in this and obviously made quite a nice speech about how green is a powerful symbol. It means that we can go forward. Everyone was like, it's very performative, yeah? Like you talk about things that it makes absolutely no sense. It's like a real big play in front of you, you know? Also in Cité Soleil, it's also quite performative here. They celebrated the decision, and that's coming from a news bulletin, the decision of several members of the international community, I see, to recognize our mutual success by reclassifying Cité Soleil as a yellow zone. It didn't happen. So they sent things out saying, hey, we are yellow now, it's fine. And then they actually, as an example in my article, the greening strategies trying to kind of present themselves as green. They had a day of reflection and action, inviting people to wear green clothes to celebrate the vision of Cité Soleil as green. Again, the performative element here is just beautiful. Luckily enough, I know this leader of Cité Soleil very well. He brought me to Cité Soleil, showed me around. And so I asked him, hey, it didn't happen, right? Between you and me, it didn't happen. But you and me, and I'm going to be publishing this. And he said, it's entirely possible that Cité Soleil is still officially and technically a red zone. But at this point, I don't think we care that much anymore. Whether or not MINUSTAH changes its designation, that's less important for us than it did 5 years ago. We're not measuring our progress on MINUSTAH's color chart. But it's interesting that he's recognizing this kind of little play that was going on between the UN and civil society actors. And I don't have a slide on this, but all the hotel owners, when I was talking to them, the strategies were really different. Obviously, we're talking about 3 to 4 major hotels. One didn't do anything. The other one was contemplating not enough social capital in order to really change something. And the one that was really pushing, Richard Morse, he was actually threatened. Seemingly, that's what he said, by American. Yeah. So he said, because then he said, what can I do in order to be, because he was really just on the limit, just on the border of the yellow zone. And he said, what can I do to change this? He said, well, you have to stop blogging for 6 months. That's what I haven't really published this because it's hearsay, right? I mean, I cannot triangulate this. But it's interesting to see that little game that is going on. And then he said, I don't want to talk about it because I'm doing something else. I'm putting a big file on certain officials of the UN in order to really push them, they're pushing me. He wasn't really into conspiracy stuff. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to be publishing this because it's going to be tricky for you at some point. But yeah, I think that my research and the way I want to develop this in the future would be looking at the limits of the objective analysis of threats, even if you take them on their own merits, right? Because obviously the critical approach to securitization will be saying, even if you do think that this area is dangerous, actually it's not that dangerous. That's one twist. But with this case is that even if you take your discourse seriously, then that would mean that the green zone would be labeled a red zone. So it makes no sense that you can never win with this objective analysis of threats. So it's more about moving towards an imagined geography of intervention in a sense. There are a few arguments that I've not really been developing, and then someone was saying to me, some of my Haitian colleagues saying, UN staffers will start a revolution if you tell them that they can't party in Pétionville anymore. So there's also obviously people that have interest in having a place to party, having a place to go. It's the same thing that happened in Timor-Leste right after the intervention, where there was this boat with all the UN staffers inside, and then up there is a disco that will open on the rooftop of this. So they need a place to vent, in a sense. Anyways. I think I tried to demonstrate how these securitization strategies are also co-constitutive of the dynamics of social segregation, especially in the Pétionville bourgeois area. And local actors are not passive. They reappropriate the discourse in multiple ways. They can resist, how they can co-opt this. The points that potentially need to be further developed. I mean, so many of my interviewees, I'm talking about almost more than 50% definitely, have been mentioning the pecuniary approach, which is, I know they keep this yellow like that because they have money involved in terms of the specific pay that is going when you are dispatched to a difficult area. You have a top up a little bit. So they say this is the reason why they don't want to change the security zones. Difficult to really discuss this, I guess. Something also I would like to know is the role of national actors. I would like to talk to UN staff, but Haitian staff, who actually don't have to follow these regulations, right? They don't have to follow the yellow zones because sometimes they live in the yellow zone. But what is the process here in terms of risk exposition if we are taking the security analysis seriously? Then that means that we are putting them in danger, right? And we don't care about that. And also potentially as a bridge between the communities, because this is where the population we want to approach, that we want to work with, are actually living. So that means that all the national staff are the only ones actually really delivering any projects on the ground. And finally, my project, I'm thinking about obviously focusing on Asia Pacific. And outside of Iraq, Afghanistan, I would like to maybe hear from you if you have any suggestions. I've heard a number of times PNG could be interesting, but it seems to me that there's no security map per se. It's more kind of security regulations applied more informally. But it's something I'm trying to think. So if you have any suggestions, they will be most welcome. Thank you very much.